Everything started after the Second World War, when the Chinese Communist Party leader Mao Zedong established the People's Republic of China in Beijing in October 1st, after prison-backed communists defeat the national government of Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang and thousands of his troops flee to Taiwan and about the United States, which backed the nationalism against invading Japanese forces during the World War II. Support Chiang's exiled Republic of China government in Taipei, setting the stage for several decades of limited U.S. relations and with mainland China. So then in 1950, the Korean War breaks out and the Soviet-backed North Korean People's Army invades South Korea on June 25, and the United Nations and the United States rush to South Korea's defense. China, in support of Communist North, retaliates when USA and the United Nations and South Korean troops approach to the Chinese border. Around 4 million people died in 3 years of conflict until the United Nations China in North Korea signed an armistice agreement in 1953. Then were different events like the crisis in Taiwan, in the Tibetan prison, in the first atomic tests in China, when they were in a conflict in Vietnam with the United States. In March of 1969, started the Sino-Soviet border conflict about the difference over security, ideology, and development models strained Sino-Soviet relations. China had a radical industrialization policies known as the Great Leap Forward and the Leap of Soviet Union and the Withdrawal Advisors in 1960. So the disagreements culminates in border skirmishes in March in 1969. And Moscow replaced the Washington as China's biggest threat, and the Sino-Soviet split contributes to Beijing's eventual rapprochements with the United States. In February in 1972, the President Richard Nixon spends 8 days in China, during which he meets the chairman Mao Zedong and signs the Shanghai Communique with the Premier Zhou Enlai. And the communique says that the stage for improved U.S.-Sino relations by allowing China and the United States to discuss difficult issues, particularly the Taiwan issue. And however, normalization of relations between the two countries makes slow progress for much of the decade. In the spring of 1989, thousands of students held demonstrations in Beijing Tiananmen Square, demanding democratic reforms and the end of the corruption. And on June 3rd, the government sends in military troops to clear the square, leaving hundreds of protesters dead, and in response, the US government suspends military sales to Beijing and frees all the relations. In September of 1993, China released a political prisoner called Wen Jiansheng, who was a prisoner since 1979. And in that year, the President Bill Clinton launches a policy of constructive engagement with China. However, after Beijing loses its bid to host the 2000 Olympic Games, the Chinese government imprisons Wu again. 4 years later, Clinton secures the release of Wei and the Tiananmen Square protester Wang Dan, and Beijing deports both dissidents to the United States. Finally, in October of 2000, the US President Bill Clinton signs the US-China Relations Act of 2000. In 2012, the trade tensions were risen, so the US trade deficit with China rises from $273 billion in 2010 to all-time high of $295 billion in 2011. So the increase accounts of the 3 quarters of the growth in the USA trade deficit for 2011. In March of 2012, the United States, the European Union, and Japan filed a request for consultation with China at the World Trade Organization over its restrictions on exporting rare earth metals. And China called this move rash and unfair, so while bowing the defense is right and trade disputes. After 2012, the current president of United States, Donald Trump, and the current president of China, Xi Jinping, were selected as president of the United States and China. And it wasn't until 2018 when Trump tariffs targeted China. So in 2018, the Trump administration announced the sweeping tariff on Chinese imports worth at least $50 billion in response to what the White House alleges in Chinese theft of U.S. technology and intellectual property, coming on the heels of tariffs on steels and aluminum imports. And these measures target goods including clothing and shoes and electronics, and restricting some Chinese investment in the last year. The brand Huawei chose United States because they banned the brand of the country, and after that all the trade war intensifies. So after that the trade talks break down, and the Trump administration raises the tariff from 10 to 25% on 2,000 billion of foreign Chinese goods, and China retailers by announcing plans to increase tariffs of 60 billions of American goods. Finally, in the beginning of this year, the phase one of the trade deal started, but then was stopped by the coronavirus pandemic, and that was what happened with the trade deal. But Trump's ends Hong Kong's special status. The last thing we know is that Mike Pompeo, the U.S. Secretary of State, delivers a speech saying that the engagement with China has failed. That was on July 23 of this year. Thank you so much.